In the sun-scorched canyons of the American Southwest, where ancient traditions reign supreme, an Apache medicine woman makes a choice that will forever alter her destiny. Found kneeling beside a wounded U.S. cavalry scout, her healing hands work to save the life of a man her people have sworn to destroy. She knows the price of mercy in a culture where honor demands blood, yet she cannot ignore her healer's calling. At dawn, her people will gather to pass judgment. The punishment for aiding the enemy is brutal, a ritual that will strip her of everything she holds dear. But what her tribe doesn't realize is that her act of compassion is just the beginning of a story that will challenge the very foundations of their warrior code. Can one woman's courage redefine what it truly means to be strong? Before we dive deeper into this tale of forbidden mercy, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story speaks to your heart, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's chapter will change everything. Dawn mist clung to the canyon walls as Nijoni gathered herbs in her grandmother's worn leather pouch. Her fingers traced the intricate beadwork that spelled out her true name, Walking Medicine, though few now remembered its meaning. The morning air carried the scent of sage and desert rain, a blessing from the spirits before the scorching heat would claim the day. At 25 summers, she was younger than any medicine woman in tribal memory, yet her hands held the wisdom of generations. She worked in silence, selecting only the freshest leaves of each sacred plant, offering quiet prayers of gratitude as she had been taught. The journal her grandmother had left her lay open beside her knees, its pages yellow with age but rich with healing knowledge. The spirits guide your hands, daughter. The voice belonged to Elder Mingan, his weathered face creased with approval. He had been the first to recognize her gift, even before her grandmother's passing. They guide us all, Elder, Nijoni responded, carefully wrapping a bundle of willow bark. The boy's fever broke at midnight. So I heard. Mingan lowered himself. Beside her, his joints creaking like old leather. You stayed with him through the night. The healing path knows no time. She spoke her grandmother's words with quiet certainty. We are called when we are called. The elder's eyes crinkled with memory. Your grandmother said the same many moons ago. She would be proud to see her teachings live on through you. Nijoni tucked the last herbs into her pouch, her fingers lingering on a small leather-bound book hidden in its depths. Her grandmother's journal, filled with secrets of both Apache medicine and forbidden knowledge gleaned from other tribes, even the white man's doctors, knowledge that some tribal elders would consider dangerous. The old ways are strong, Mingan continued, but times change like wind through the canyons. Your grandmother understood this. Nijoni looked up sharply. Had he seen the book? But the elder's face revealed nothing but serene acceptance. She taught me that healing comes in many forms, Nijoni said carefully, that sometimes we must look beyond our own traditions to serve the greater good. Wisdom and danger often walk the same path. Mingan's voice carried a note of warning. Our people face many threats. The blue-coated soldiers push closer to our lands each season. Some say any knowledge of their ways weakens us. And what do you say, Elder? I say that a warrior's strength lies not just in his weapon, but in knowing when to use it. He gestured to her pouch. Your medicines are your weapons, Nijoni. Use them wisely. A drum began to beat in the distance, the morning call to gather. Mingan rose slowly, leaning on his gnarled walking stick. The council meets today, he said. There is talk of cavalry movements in the eastern canyons. Dark times may be coming. Nijoni nodded, securing her medicine pouch. Then my herbs may be needed more than ever. May the spirits grant that you use them only for our people. The elder's words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. As Mingan made his way back to the village, Nijoni remained among the herbs, her grandmother's teachings echoing in her mind. A healer's duty is to life itself, the old woman had said. The spirits do not see the boundaries men draw upon the earth. She touched the hidden journal once more, feeling the weight of its forbidden wisdom. Her grandmother had dared to learn from all sources: Mexican curanderas, white doctors, even Chinese merchants with their strange Eastern medicines. That knowledge had saved many tribal lives, though few knew its true origin. The drumbeats grew more insistent. Soon the council would convene, and with it would come more warnings about the encroaching cavalry, more calls to strengthen traditional ways. Nijoni gathered her medicines and stood, watching the sun rise over the canyon walls. She whispered a prayer taught to her by her grandmother, one that asked not for victory over enemies, but for the wisdom to heal whatever wounds the day might bring. Little did she know that before the sun set again, that prayer would be tested in ways she could never have imagined. The council's warnings still echoed in Nijoni's mind as she walked the hidden paths of the canyon. War was coming, they said. The bluecoats had been seen just 3 days' ride east, their scouts probing deeper into Apache territory with each passing moon. Every warrior was to kill any soldier found in their lands, no exceptions, no mercy. She paused to gather more golden seal, its bitter root a powerful medicine for infection. That's when she heard it, a soft groan, barely louder than the desert wind. Her body tensed, years of tribal training taking over as she melted into the shadow of a boulder. The sound came again, weaker this time. Following it, she found a narrow cleft in the canyon wall. Blood marked the entrance, not much but fresh. Inside, sprawled on the rocky ground, lay a cavalry scout. His blue uniform was caked with dust and blood, torn where an Apache arrow had found its mark near his shoulder. A broken compass lay beside his outstretched hand, its glass face shattered. He was young, perhaps her age, his face pale beneath days of stubble. Nijoni's first instinct was to retreat, to alert the warriors. This man was the enemy her people had warned about. His presence here meant others would follow, and yet his breathing was shallow, labored. Without treatment, he would die before sunset. Her grandmother's voice whispered from memory, "The spirits give us the power to heal so that we might honor life itself." The scout's eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on her face. Fear flickered across his features, but he made no move to reach for his holstered pistol. "Please," he whispered in English, a language Nijoni understood but was forbidden to speak. Water. She should leave. Every moment she remained increased the danger, to him, to herself, to her tribe. But her hands were already moving to her medicine pouch, driven by an instinct deeper than fear. The arrow had to come out first. Its position suggested it had missed any vital organs, but infection was setting in. She could smell it in his sweat, see it in the angry red flesh around the wound. "Be still," she said in Apache, knowing he wouldn't understand the words, but hoping her tone would convey their meaning. From her pouch, she withdrew her grandmother's bone knife, the one used only for healing. The scout's eyes widened at the blade, but he remained still. Trust, or perhaps simply weakness. Either way, it would make her work easier. Nijoni began to sing softly, an ancient healing song passed down through generations of medicine women. The knife moved surely, carefully widening the wound's entrance. The scout bore it silently, only the tension in his jaw betraying his pain. The arrow came free with a sudden release. Fresh blood welled up, but Nijoni was ready with a poultice of golden seal and yarrow. As she worked, she felt the familiar connection that came with healing, the flow of energy between healer and patient, the subtle guidance of the spirits. "Thank you," the scout managed, his voice rough with pain. "I'm James Cooper." Nijoni continued her work in silence. Names created bonds, and bonds led to choices that could not be unmade. Yet even as she thought this, she knew it was too late. By choosing to heal this man, she had already set them both on a new path. She cleaned the wound thoroughly, using techniques from both her Apache training and her grandmother's secret journal. The scout's eyes followed her movements with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. "Why," he asked finally, Why help me? Nijoni met his gaze. In his eyes, she saw not an enemy, but a life, one that the spirits had placed in her path. She touched her medicine pouch, feeling the reassuring presence of her grandmother's journal within. Because healing, she said in careful English, breaking her tribe's prohibition, knows no boundaries. The words felt like a door closing behind her, even as another opened ahead. She had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. But as she began the lengthy process of treating the infection that threatened James Cooper's life, Nijoni felt a deep certainty beneath her fear. This was her calling. Whatever the cost, whatever her people's judgment, she would follow the healer's path, even if it led her away from everything she had ever known. Night crept into the canyon as Nijoni prepared for the deeper healing. She had treated the immediate wounds, but true healing required more than just herbs and bandages. From her medicine pouch, she withdrew her most sacred possession, an eagle feather passed down through 7 generations of medicine women. James watched her through fever-bright eyes as she arranged her medicines in the prescribed circle. The infection in his wound fought against her herbs, and his life hung in a delicate balance. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Calling to the spirits," she answered in her careful English. "They must agree to help. You." She lit a small bundle of sage, letting its cleansing smoke fill the rocky shelter. The eagle feather moved through the smoke in ancient patterns as she began to sing. The healing song rose from deep within her, a melody older than memory. James's eyes widened as her voice filled the space. "I've never heard anything like that. It is forbidden," she said between verses, "for you to hear, for me to show." Yet she continued, knowing that some laws must bend so that others might survive. The night deepened around them as she worked. She drew symbols in the dust with her grandmother's bone knife, circles of power, lines of healing. James's fever rose and fell like the tide, his consciousness drifting. In his delirium, he spoke of home, a farm in Pennsylvania, far from these desert canyons. He called for his mother, long dead from fever. Without thinking, Nijoni took his hand, anchoring him to the present with her touch. "Your mother watches," she told him softly. "All who have gone before watch. They help me heal you." His fingers tightened around hers. "Why risk this for me?" Nijoni paused in her work, considering. The eagle feather trembled in her other hand, its presence reminding her of all who had walked the healer's path before her. "My grandmother taught me that healing is a sacred trust," she said finally. "When the spirits show us one in need, we must answer, even if it costs us everything." "And what will it cost you?" She met his feverish gaze. "We shall see when the sun rises." Through the night, she battled for his life. She used every skill, every secret remedy recorded in her grandmother's journal. When Apache medicine alone wasn't enough, she turned to the forbidden knowledge, techniques learned from Mexican healers, treatments gleaned from white doctors. Near dawn, the fever broke. James fell into a healing sleep, his breathing finally steady and strong. Nijoni sat back, exhausted but satisfied. The eagle feather had grown warm in her hands, humming with spent power. She should leave now. The healing was done, her duty fulfilled. With luck, she could return to her people. Before anyone noticed her absence, yet something held her there. Not just concern for her patient, but a sense that this night had changed something fundamental in her world. James stirred, his eyes opening with new clarity. The fever haze had burned away, leaving sharp awareness. In its place, he looked at their still joined hands, then at the healing circle surrounding them. "You saved my life," he said simply. "The spirit saved you. I was only their instrument." "No." His voice was stronger now. "You chose to help me. You risked everything to do what you believed was right. I won't forget that." Nijoni began to pack away her medicines, carefully wrapping the eagle feather in its ceremonial cloth. The first light of dawn was creeping into their shelter, bringing with it the weight of consequences. "Can you walk?" she asked, her practical healer's mind already planning their next steps. I think so. But you should go. Your people will find you if you stay here. She secured her medicine pouch. We must move before the sun rises fully. The healing is not complete. And she touched the eagle feather through its wrapping. Some paths once chosen must be walked to their end. James struggled to sit up, his soldier's training evident in his determination. I won't let you destroy yourself for me. Nijoni helped him rise, supporting his weight as he found his balance. My grandmother once told me that destruction and rebirth are two sides of the same medicine. Perhaps this is my rebirth. Together, they faced the growing dawn. The canyon walls blazed with early light, and somewhere in the distance, a crow called. A warning, or perhaps a blessing. Either way, Nijoni knew there was no turning back now. She had chosen her path, and the spirits would light the way forward, step by step, into whatever future awaited them. The warning came with the wind, a hawk's cry that wasn't a hawk at all. Nijoni froze, her heart thundering in her chest. The tribal scouts had their own sacred language, passed down through generations of warriors, and she knew this signal well. They had found her trail. What is it? James whispered, leaning heavily against the canyon wall. They had managed to move only a short distance from the shelter, his wound limiting their pace. Scouts! She pulled him deeper into the shadows of an overhanging cliff. 3 of them coming from the north. The warrior's horns sounded then, a long, low note that would carry through the entire canyon system. It was the sound of discovery, of prey found, of betrayal uncovered. James reached for his pistol, but Nijoni's hand stopped him. No, no more blood. They'll kill me, he said. And you, they will try me under tribal law. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled as she touched her medicine pouch. The punishment for helping an enemy is severe, but it is not death, not for a medicine woman. The horns sounded again, closer now. Nijoni could hear the drums beginning in the distance, the gathering drums that would summon the council. A time of judgment approached with the rising sun. You can still go back, James urged. Tell them you found me dead, or that you were treating me only to learn cavalry secrets. Nijoni shook her head. The eagle feather in her pouch seemed to pulse with warmth, remembering the sacred songs of healing. I will not dishonor the spirits with lies. What I did, I chose freely. Footsteps crunched on loose stone above them. A shadow moved against the dawn sky, standing bare, the lead scout, his bow already drawn. 2 more warriors flanked him, their faces painted for war. Nijoni! Standing Bear's voice cracked with disbelief. What have you done? She stepped away from James, her hands raised to show she carried no weapons. Only her medicine pouch hung at her side, its weight a reminder of her true path. What my calling demanded of me, she answered in Apache. What the spirits asked. The spirits demand loyalty to the tribe. The second warrior, young Rushing Water, had already knocked an arrow aimed at James's heart. The spirits demand. We honor life, Nijoni countered, as all our healers have done since the first medicine woman walked these canyons. Standing Bear's expression hardened. You will face the council for this. Both of you will be judged when the sun reaches its peak. He gestured to his warriors. Bind them, separately. As rough hands seized her, Nijoni caught James's eye. In his face, she saw not fear for himself, but anguish for her fate. She gave him the smallest nod, a healer's promise that this story was not yet finished. They were marched back toward the village, the rising sun painting the canyon walls blood red. The drums grew louder with each step, calling the tribe to witness judgment. Nijoni walked with her head high, feeling the weight of her grandmother's journal and the eagle feather in her pouch. She had chosen healing over hatred, compassion over vengeance. Whatever came next, she would face it with the strength of that truth. The horn sounded one final time, 3 long notes that echoed through the canyons, the signal of capture. of justice to come. But to Nijoni's ears, it carried a different message. It was the sound of an old world ending, and perhaps, if the spirits were kind, a new one beginning. The council fire cast long shadows across the gathering place as dawn approached. Nijoni knelt before the tribal elders, her medicine pouch taken, her hands bound with strips of leather. Behind her, she could feel the presence of her people, hundreds of eyes watching, judging, waiting. James had been taken elsewhere, his fate to be decided separately. The thought of him facing tribal justice alone made her heart constrict, but she forced herself to focus on the ceremony beginning before her. Elder Mingan approached, carrying the ceremonial knife, its obsidian blade catching the firelight. His eyes met hers briefly, and in them she saw not anger but a deep sadness. Nijoni called walking medicine, he began in the formal tone of tribal judgment. You stand accused of betraying your people by aiding an enemy of the Apache nation. How do you answer? She lifted her chin, speaking clearly so all could hear. I answer that I betrayed no one. I honored my calling as a healer. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The ceremonial knife gleamed as Mingan raised it. Our laws are sacred, he continued. They have protected our people since the time of the first ancestors. To break them is to break faith with all who came before. Our traditions are sacred too, Nijoni responded, her grandmother's teachings giving her strength. And the highest tradition of the medicine women is to honor life itself. The spirits do not recognize the boundaries of war. The bluecoats bring death to our people, someone shouted from the crowd. They destroy our lands, break their treaties. Then let us be better than them. Nijoni's voice rang out. Let us show that our way is not only about warfare, but wisdom. Elder. Mingan raised his hand for silence. The firelight painted his weathered face in stark relief as he spoke again. You were trusted with sacred knowledge, given powers passed down through generations of healers. This trust was not to be used for the enemy. Every life is sacred, Nijoni said softly. That was the first lesson my grandmother taught me. Would you have me dishonor her teachings? A new figure stepped forward, throat like dawn, the oldest of the medicine women. Her face was a map of wrinkles, her eyes bright with gathered wisdom. In her hands she held Nijoni's medicine pouch. I have examined her medicines, the old woman announced. She used the sacred eagle feather to heal the bluecoat. Such power cannot be summoned without the spirit's blessing. More murmurs from the crowd. Elder Mingan's grip tightened on the ceremonial knife. The spirits test us in many ways, he said. Perhaps they test our resolve to defend our people. Or perhaps, throat like dawn countered, they test our capacity for compassion in times of war. The sky was lightening now, the stars fading one by one. Soon the sun would rise, and with it would come the final judgment. Nijoni felt a strange calm settle over her. Whatever came next, she had walked the healer's path with truth. Elder Mingan approached her, the ceremonial knife raised. The council has deliberated. For the crime of aiding an enemy, you will bear the mark of betrayal. Your medicines will be taken. You will be cast out from the tribe until the next moon, when you may petition to return. If you renounce your actions and swear loyalty anew, the knife descended toward her shoulder, where it would cut the mark of exile. Nijoni did not flinch. I cannot renounce what the spirits guided me to do, she said clearly. I will bear your mark, but I will not deny my calling. The blade bit into her flesh, sharp and cold. Blood welled up, but Nijoni did not cry out. She felt each cut as the symbol was carved. 3 lines intersecting to form the mark of the outsider. When it was done, throat like dawn stepped forward again. Against the council's protests, she pressed Nijoni's medicine pouch back into her hands. The spirit's gifts cannot be taken by men's laws, the old woman whispered. Walk your path with courage, daughter. Sometimes exile is the only way forward. The first ray of sun crested the canyon rim, painting the sky in flames. Nijoni rose, her shoulder burning, her medicine pouch restored. The crowd parted before her as she walked toward the eastern trail, the path of exile. She paused only once, turning back to Elder Mingan. "What of the scout?" The elder's face was unreadable. "His fate will be decided by the warriors' council at noon." Nijoni nodded slowly, her mind already forming plans. She had until noon to save James Cooper's life once more, this time not from a physical wound, but from the justice of her own people. The sun rose fully as she walked into exile, the weight of her medicine pouch heavy with purpose. The mark of betrayal throbbed on her shoulder, but in her heart she felt only the certainty of her chosen path. Behind her, the council fire smoldered into ash, and ahead, the desert waited with both danger and promise. The desert sun climbed higher as Nijoni made her way through the twisted arroyos, her shadow shrinking beneath her feet. The mark on her shoulder had stopped bleeding, but each movement sent fresh pain through her body. She welcomed it. Pain meant life, and life meant possibility. Her first task was water. The tribe would have expected her to head east, following the traditional exile path toward the rising sun. Instead, she moved north, where she knew of a hidden spring tucked into a narrow cleft of rock. Her grandmother had shown it to her years ago, calling it the healer's refuge. The water skin she carried was damaged, deliberately slashed by one of the warriors during her judgment. But she had learned long ago that the desert provided for those who knew its secrets. Using yucca fibers and pine sap, she fashioned a temporary patch. As she worked, her mind raced through possibilities. James would face the Warriors' Council at noon. They would likely hold him in the cave beneath Eagle Rock, the traditional place for prisoners awaiting judgment. 2 warriors would guard him, armed with bows and knives. The cave had only one entrance, but she remembered something her grandmother had once mentioned. Nijoni opened her medicine pouch, drawing out the worn journal. Its pages held more than just healing wisdom. Her grandmother had mapped every cave system in their territory, marking hidden passages and forgotten chambers. Some dated back to the ancient ones who had carved homes from the living rock. There, on a page filled with drawings of medicinal plants, she found what she sought. A small diagram showed a narrow chimney at the back of Eagle Rock Cave, one that led to a high opening in the cliff face. Too small for warriors to use, but perhaps just wide enough for someone desperate enough to try. She took stock of her resources. The medicine pouch contained her healing supplies, the eagle feather, a length of braided horsehair rope, and various herbs. Some of those herbs, she knew, could do more than heal. Desert sage, when burned, could produce a thick smoke. Datura, used carefully, could confuse the mind. A plan began to form, but she would need help. As if in answer to her thoughts, a shadow passed overhead, a red-tailed hawk circling low. Her grandmother had taught her that such signs were not coincidence. Nijoni touched the mark of betrayal on her shoulder, letting its pain sharpen her resolve. She was no longer bound by tribal law. That freed her to act in ways that would have been unthinkable just days ago. The sun was approaching its zenith. She had perhaps 2 hours before the Warriors' Council would convene. Time enough if the spirits favored her cause. Moving swiftly now, she gathered what she needed from the desert. Around her, dried creosote bush for fire, specific stones that would crack loudly when heated, a straight branch of ironwood that, with her bone knife, she could fashion into a climbing spike. Each item went into her medicine pouch, which grew heavy with more than just healing supplies. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Sometimes healing requires us to cause pain first. The trick is knowing the difference between pain that heals and pain that only harms. As she worked, Nijoni whispered prayers, not the formal prayers of tribal ceremony, but the simple, direct words her grandmother had taught her. Prayers to the spirits of the rock, asking for safe passage, to the wind, asking for its help, in carrying smoke, to the hawk still circling overhead, asking for its keen sight. The mark on her shoulder throbbed in time with her heartbeat. but she took it as encouragement rather than warning. She was marked as an outsider now, but perhaps that was what this situation needed, someone who could step beyond the boundaries of tradition to do what was necessary. She thought of James, waiting in the darkness of the cave for a judgment. That would certainly mean death. He had trusted her once with his life. Now she would ask for that trust again, though this time the medicine she brought would be of a different kind. The sun climbed higher. Nijoni secured her water skin and rose, testing the weight of her transformed medicine pouch. She was no longer just a healer, but something new, a woman walking between worlds, carrying both medicine and deception, healing and harm. The spirits would judge her actions, as would her own conscience. But for now, she had a life to save. And this time, it would take more than herbs and prayers to succeed. Eagle Rock cast a jagged shadow in the fading light as Nijoni approached from above. She moved like a ghost, her feet finding holes in the ancient stone that even the tribal scouts didn't know existed. Her grandmother's star chart had guided her to this precise spot, a narrow chimney that dropped straight down into the prisoner's cave. The guards' voices drifted up from below, carried by the evening wind. They were discussing the coming judgment, their words sharp with anticipated justice. Of James himself, she heard nothing. She prayed he still lived. Securing the horsehair rope to a sturdy rock, Nijoni prepared her medicines. The smoke bundle would go first, sage and creosote bound together with a core of green branches that would create thick, choking clouds. Then the heated stones, their explosion-like cracks designed to create confusion. She waited for the stars to align exactly as her grandmother's chart showed. When the war star touched the peak of Eagle Rock, she lit the first bundle and dropped it down the chimney. The reaction was instant. Shouts of alarm echoed up from below as dense smoke filled the cave. She heard the guards stumbling, coughing. "Perfect. Spirits," the cry came from below. "The prisoner has medicine power." The heated stones went next, cracking like gunfire as they struck the cave floor. In the chaos, Nijoni lowered herself down the rope, the eagle feather pressed against her heart for protection. She found James bound in the deepest part of the cave, his face streaked with dirt, but his eyes alert. He showed no surprise at her. "Appearance! I knew you'd come," he whispered as she cut his bonds with her bone knife. "Save your strength," she replied, helping him up. "We have far to go." The guards had retreated to the cave entrance, still believing they faced spirit magic, but their confusion wouldn't last long. Already she could hear the alarm being raised in the camp below. Using the last of the smoke for cover, Nijoni led James to the chimney. The climb would be brutal with his injured shoulder, but they had no choice. Death waited at the cave mouth. "Up," she urged, guiding his hands to the rope. "Don't think, just climb." He moved with a soldier's discipline, fighting through pain. As they ascended into darkness, behind them warrior cries echoed through the canyon. The hunt was beginning. They emerged under starlight, the war star now past its peak. Nijoni oriented herself using her grandmother's chart, finding the secret path that would lead them through the maze of canyons. "They'll track us," James said, his breath coming in harsh gasps. "Not where we're going." Nijoni pressed a bundle of strong-smelling herbs into his hand. "Crush these as we walk. It will mask our scent." They moved through the night like shadows, using every trick her grandmother's journal had revealed. When they heard pursuit, they doubled back, laid false trails, used dry creek beds to leave no prints. The mark on Nijoni's shoulder burned with each movement, but she drew strength from its pain. Near midnight they paused in a narrow cave, their bodies pressed close in the darkness. James's fever had returned, though not as severe as before. As she applied a cooling poultice, his hand found hers. "Why risk everything twice?" he asked. In the starlight filtering through the cave mouth, Nijoni studied his face. She saw there, not an enemy, but a fellow traveler on the path the spirits had chosen. Because some things are worth the cost, she answered. My grandmother taught me that healing isn't just about mending bodies. Sometimes it's about mending the divisions between people. A hawk's cry pierced the night, the same one from that morning. Nijoni smiled, recognizing the sign. We should move, she said. The spirits guide our path, but we must walk it ourselves. Together, they stepped back into the starlit canyon. Two outcasts now bound by something stronger than tribal law or military duty. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and perhaps a new kind of healing, one that could bridge the chasm between their peoples one heart at a time. Dawn found them deep in the sacred canyons, in a chamber Nijoni had known about but never entered. Ancient paintings covered the walls, figures of healers and warriors, spirit animals, and forgotten ceremonies. Her grandmother had marked this place in her journal as the Cave of Memories, warning that it should only be used in greatest need. James leaned against the cool rock wall, his strength finally giving out after their night of flight. Nijoni checked his wound. The stitches had held, but the fever lingered. These paintings, he said, his eyes tracing the ochre figures. They tell a story, don't they? Nijoni dipped a cloth in their precious water, washing his face. Many stories. This was a place of power long before my people came to these canyons. The ancient ones left their wisdom here. She studied one panel in particular, a circular design showing figures of different colors joining hands around a central fire. Her grandmother's journal had translated its meaning. All peoples come from one source, like streams from a single spring. Your people will keep hunting us, James said, watching her face. Yes. She prepared a fresh poultice for his shoulder. But they won't look here. This place is taboo, forbidden except to medicine people. Even the warriors won't enter. Because of the spirits, because of fear. Fear of the old magic, of change, of anything that threatens what they know. She touched the mark on her shoulder, still raw. Fear is what drives them to mark some as outsiders. James caught her hand, examining the intricate tattoos that marked her as a healer. And what drives you, Nijoni? The question hung in the air between them. In the dim light filtering through the high cave entrance, Nijoni saw the paintings, seemed to move, telling their ancient stories of transformation. My grandmother once told me that every healer must choose between what is safe and what is right. She opened her medicine pouch, touching the eagle feather. I choose to believe that healing can bridge any divide if we have the courage to try. A sound echoed from outside. Distant drums. The warriors were still searching, but their patterns had changed. They were performing the ritual of cleansing, trying to erase her betrayal from the tribe's spirit. Tell me about your home, she said, needing to focus on something beyond the drums. What made you become a scout? James was quiet for a moment, his fingers absently tracing a spiral pattern on the cave wall. I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania. Green hills, forests, nothing like this desert, but there was a Delaware medicine woman who lived nearby. She helped birth me, healed my father's broken leg. She taught me that wisdom doesn't belong to any one people. What happened to her? The town turned against her during a fever outbreak, said she was practicing witchcraft. She disappeared one night. I joined the cavalry, thinking I could help bridge the gap between our peoples, make things different. He gave a bitter laugh. Instead, I'm part of pushing your people further into these canyons. Nijoni studied the paintings again, the joined figures around the fire. Perhaps we're both part of something larger. My grandmother's journal speaks of prophecies about a time of great change when the old boundaries would fade. And the price for such change? She touched her wounded shoulder. Everything has a price. The question is whether what we gain is worth what we lose. The light in the cave shifted as the sun reached its zenith. The ancient paintings caught the rays, making the figures dance. One showed a woman carrying medicines, walking between two worlds. Nijoni felt a shiver of recognition. We should rest while we can, she said, laying out her medicines. Tonight, we'll need to move again. I know a path through the high canyons that leads to neutral ground. And then we find a way to show both our peoples that there's another path besides endless war. That healing is possible even between enemies. James caught her hand again, his grip stronger now as the medicines did their work. Not enemies, he said softly. Not anymore. In the deepening quiet of their sanctuary, surrounded by the wisdom of the Ancient Ones, Nijoni felt the truth of his words. The mark of betrayal on her shoulder seemed to pulse in agreement, its pain transforming into something else, a reminder that sometimes the deepest healing required first being broken. They left the sacred cave as dusk painted the canyon walls purple. Nijoni's ears caught the faint sound of a tracking totem, the hollow reed whistle used by Apache warriors to signal a trail found. The sound made her blood run cold. "They're closer than I expected," she whispered, guiding James behind a cluster of rocks. "They've brought Shadow Walker. Who? The tribe's best tracker. He can read signs others miss." She touched her medicine pouch where the tracking totem she'd taken from the cave rested, a warrior's charm meant to aid in pursuit. Now she would use it to evade its original purpose. "He was supposed to teach me his secrets before—" A loose stone clattered somewhere above them. Nijoni pulled James deeper into the shadows, her hand covering his mouth. 3 figures moved along the ridge, dark silhouettes against the dying light. Shadow Walker would be in the lead, reading the canyon's secrets. The medicine woman's. Tracks change. His voice drifted down. "She walks like smoke now, using the old ways. She dishonors those ways," another warrior spat. "Helping the blue coat escape judgment, perhaps." Shadow Walker's tone held something else, respect or perhaps uncertainty. But see how she uses the sacred patterns. Each step a prayer, each false trail a medicine sign. They were directly above now. A shower of pebbles rained down, one striking Nijoni's shoulder near her wound. She bit back a gasp of pain. "The spirits are angry," the third warrior said. "The signs speak of chaos to come." Shadow Walker made a sound of disagreement. "The signs speak of change. The old songs tell of a time when healing would bridge the warpath." "Save your mysteries," the second warrior growled. "The trail leads east. They'll head for the cavalry fort." Nijoni felt James tense beside her. That would be the obvious escape route, straight to the nearest military outpost. But it was also a trap. Every warrior in the territory would be watching those trails. She waited until the tracking party moved on before speaking. "They'll split up now. Shadow Walker knows I won't take the easy path. He seems to know you well. He was my teacher for a time, showed me how to read the land's stories, track game for healing ceremonies." She checked his wound in the fading light. "We'll go north instead. There's a hidden valley my grandmother wrote about, but first—" She unwrapped the tracking totem, a simple reed pipe decorated with hawk feathers and sacred symbols. Its magic was meant to sharpen the hunter's senses, reveal the prey's path. But like all medicines, it could be turned to other purposes. Nijoni began to sing softly, not a healing song this time, but one of confusion and misdirection. The totem trembled in her hands as she wove the magic, sending false signs along. "The eastern trails, you're using their own medicine against them," James observed. "All medicine is neutral. It's the intention that matters." She tucked the totem away. "We have until moonrise. They'll discover the deception when the night wind changes." They moved carefully through the deepening darkness, using the last light to find hand and footholds in the treacherous terrain. James's wound made climbing difficult, but he never complained. Once, when she stumbled, his hand caught her with surprising strength. The moon was rising when they heard it, the hunting horn's call of pursuit, but now with an edge of frustration. Shadow Walker had discovered her trick with the totem. "They'll double back," Nijoni said, quickening their pace. "Search all the paths they dismissed before." "How far to this valley?" "Too far." She studied the stars, comparing them to her grandmother's charts. "But there's another place, one even Shadow Walker doesn't know." A hawk screamed overhead, the same one that had followed them since her exile. In the moonlight, she saw it circle 3 times before heading west. Another sign. "We'll have to climb," she said, gesturing to a sheer cliff face. "There's a shelf halfway up, hidden by shadows. If we can reach it." The hunting horns sounded again, closer now. They were out of choices. The climb was brutal. Every movement sent pain shooting through Nijoni's wounded shoulder. James's bandages grew dark with fresh blood, but he matched her pace, finding strength in desperation. They reached the shelf just as voices echoed up from below. Pressed against the cold stone, they watched Shadow Walker and his warriors pass directly beneath their hiding place. The tracker paused, looking up, and for a heart-stopping moment, Nijoni was certain he saw them. But he turned away, leading his men down the canyon. Only after their footsteps faded did Nijoni release her breath. "He knew," James whispered. "He saw us, but he chose not to see," she corrected. "Even the greatest tracker can be blind to what he doesn't wish to find." They huddled together on the narrow shelf, sharing warmth as the night deepened around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, they had gained a moment's respite. In the distance, a hawk's cry echoed against the canyon walls, a reminder that their path, though dangerous, was watched over by powers beyond human understanding. The shelf in the cliff face had seemed like salvation in the dark, but as false dawn began to paint the sky, Nijoni saw the toll their desperate climb had taken. James shivered against the rock wall, his skin burning with fever despite the pre-dawn chill. The wound in his shoulder had reopened, the bandages now stained dark with blood. "I need light," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Her fingers found the small pouch of healing crystals, clear quartz and turquoise passed down through generations of medicine women. They seemed to pulse with their own inner fire as she laid them out. James's eyes flickered open, glazed with fever. "Think they'll look up here again? Shadow Walker won't return. He gave us this chance." She pressed her palm to his forehead, feeling the heat radiate. "But we have a different battle now." The light grew stronger, revealing the angry, red streaks spreading from beneath the bandage. The infection she had fought so hard to control was returning with a vengeance. Apache medicine alone hadn't been enough the first time. It wouldn't be enough now. Nijoni opened her grandmother's journal, its pages crackling in the dawn air. She found the section she needed, careful notes on the white man's healing, ways recorded from conversations with frontier doctors and Mexican curanderas. "I have to try something different," she told James, laying out her medicines. "Something my grandmother learned from your people's healers." He managed a weak smile. "Mixing medicines? Dangerous. More dangerous not to." She arranged the crystals in a healing pattern around his wound. "The spirits understand necessity." From her pouch, she drew out items gathered in their flight. Red willow bark for pain, golden seal for infection. But alongside these traditional medicines, she placed things her grandmother had written of. A small bottle of alcohol taken from the cave stores, clean cloth torn from her own shirt, needle and thread prepared with special care. She began to sing, not the pure Apache healing songs, but something new, a melody that wove together different traditions, different ways of understanding the body's mysteries. The crystals seemed to brighten as her voice rose and fell. "What you're doing," James's voice was barely a whisper, "your people would call it wrong. My grandmother said, true healing knows no boundaries." She cleaned the wound with alcohol, watching him bite back a cry of pain. The first medicine women learned from watching wolves treat their wounds, from seeing how deer sought out healing plants. Were they wrong to learn from those not their own kind? Working quickly now, she combined medicines as her grandmother's journal instructed. Apache herbs mixed with techniques learned from white doctors, sacred crystals laid alongside clean bandages prepared in the white man's way. All the while, she sang her hybrid healing song, feeling the power build with each verse. James's fever rose higher. In his delirium, he spoke of home, of battles, of regrets. Nizhoni caught fragments of a life lived between worlds. A boy learning from the Delaware medicine woman, a soldier trying to bridge impossible divides. "Stay with me," she urged, applying the last of her medicines. "Your path isn't finished yet." Through the long morning hours, she fought for his life a second time. The crystals grew warm, then cool, channeling energies she could feel but not see. The hybrid medicines slowly did their work, drawing out infection, knitting flesh, calming. Fever. Finally, as the sun reached its peak, James's eyes opened with real awareness. The fever had broken. "You saved me again," he said, his voice stronger. "We saved you." Nizhoni gathered up the crystals, still thrumming with spent power. Apache wisdom and white man's knowledge, working together, like your Delaware teacher tried to show. "And your grandmother?" "Yes." She smiled, touching the journal. She believed that someday all medicines would flow together, like streams joining to form a mighty river. That healing could show the way to peace between peoples. James touched the clean bandage on his shoulder, where different healing traditions had worked in harmony. Maybe it already has. Nizhoni looked out from their high shelter across the sun-washed canyons. Somewhere out there, Shadow Walker and his warriors still searched. Beyond them, cavalry patrols would be riding. Two worlds in conflict, yet here on this narrow ledge, those worlds had found a way to work together. "Rest now," she told James, storing away her medicines. "Tonight, we'll need to move again. But for now, he finished. We've found our own kind of healing." The crystals in her pouch hummed their agreement, warm with the power of boundaries crossed and new medicines born. In the tribal camp, Elder Mingan sat before the council fire, holding the ceremonial peace pipe that had not been lit in a generation. Around him, voices clashed like thunder in the mountains. "She has shamed us all." Standing Bear's voice rose above the others. "The blue coat should have faced warriors' justice. Now other tribes will say we are weak." But Throat Like Dawn stood, her ground, her ancient face serene despite the warriors' rage. "Have we become so blind that we mistake mercy for weakness? The old songs speak of a time when healing would bridge the warpath." Young warriors and tribal elders filled the council circle, their divisions as clear as the line between shadow and light. Some called for hunters to bring back Nizhoni and the scout for execution. Others, mostly younger members and those who remembered her grandmother's wisdom, urged for understanding. Shadow Walker entered the circle, dust from the trail still coating his clothes. All eyes turned to the master tracker. "The trail is lost," he announced, though something in his voice suggested choice rather than failure. "They have become like smoke on the wind." "Or perhaps your heart has softened," Standing Bear challenged. "We all know you were her teacher." "I taught her to read the land's truth," Shadow Walker replied calmly. "And the truth I read now speaks of change coming, whether we welcome it or not." Elder Mingan raised the peace pipe, silencing the crowd. "My own father carried this pipe. He believed that one day it would be lit again when the right sign appeared. His eyes found Throat Like Dawn. Tell them what you have seen." The old medicine woman stepped forward, her gnarled hands holding something that made the warriors draw back. Nizhoni's eagle feather, left behind in the cave. "This feather has touched two medicines," she announced. "Apache ways and the white. Man's knowledge, woven together with a power that made even the spirits take notice." She held it up so all could see how it glowed faintly in the firelight. "When she healed the scout, she did what no medicine woman has done before. She bridged the divide between our peoples and broke our most sacred laws," a warrior countered. "Laws can change," came a new voice. Little Creek, one of the younger women, stepped forward. "My own child lives because Nizhoni dared to use the white man's medicine during the fever season. Would you call that betrayal?" More voices joined hers, speaking of other times when Nizhoni's unusual healing had saved lives. The divide in the tribe grew clearer, between those who clung to the old ways of war and those who saw the need for change. Elder Mingan held up the peace pipe once more. The question before us is not just about one medicine woman and one scout. It is about who we will become in these changing times. The cavalry pushes closer every season, Standing Bear warned. This is no time for soft hearts. Perhaps, Shadow Walker countered, it is exactly the time. Nijoni has shown us another path, one that requires more courage than war. The debate raged as the sun crossed the sky. But something had shifted in the tribe, a seed of change planted by a medicine woman who dared to heal across boundaries. Even those calling for punishment spoke with less certainty. As dusk approached, Elder Mingan rose, leaning on his staff. I have heard all voices. The tribe stands divided, but perhaps this division will lead us to wisdom. He lifted the peace pipe. I say we wait. Let the spirits show us if Nijoni's path leads to destruction or healing. And the Bluecoat, Standing Bear demanded, if they survive the desert's judgment, we will know the spirits' will. Though not all agreed, none challenged the elder's decision. As the council fire burned low, Throat like Dawn gathered the eagle, feather, and walked to the canyon's edge. There, unseen by the others, she smiled at a red-tailed hawk circling overhead. Go, little sister, she whispered. Show them the way to a new dawn. The sound of horses' hooves echoed through the canyon like distant thunder. Nijoni and James crouched behind a granite outcropping, watching the cavalry patrol pass below. 6 riders, their blue uniforms dusty from the trail, led by a lieutenant, whose bearing spoke of West Point training and Eastern privilege. Colonel Harrison's men, James whispered, recognition and worry mixing in his voice. They're ranging far beyond their usual patrol routes. Nijoni studied the papers scattered across the lieutenant's saddle. Military orders that had brought the patrol deep into Apache territory. They search for you? Partly. James's face was grim. But Harrison's been looking for an excuse to push into these canyons. My disappearance gives him one. The patrol halted at a fork in the canyon. Through the morning haze, Nijoni could make out the lieutenant consulting a map. His frustrated gestures suggested he was lost in the maze-like terrain. Lieutenant Morris, one of the younger soldiers, pointed to something on the ground. Tracks. Here, sir. Apache design. The lieutenant dismounted, examining the signs. Fresh. No more than a day old. We're close to their camp. Nijoni felt her heart tighten. The tracks would lead the cavalry straight to her people's summer grounds where the children and elders stayed during the hunting season. The warriors were out searching for her and James, leaving the camp vulnerable. We have to warn them, she said. James caught her arm. The colonel's orders will be clear. Any Apache resistance is to be met with full force. These men aren't like me, Nijoni. They won't see beyond their orders. Then we must make them see. She touched her medicine pouch, feeling the warmth of the healing crystals within. Your people respect written words, yes? Orders on paper? What are you thinking? Those papers the lieutenant carries, they're his orders? James nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Military orders have to be followed exactly as written. Change the orders. Change the path they take. It was dangerous. Perhaps more dangerous than anything they'd attempted so far, but Nijoni had learned from her grandmother that sometimes the greatest healing required the greatest risk. They waited until the patrol moved around the next bend, then worked their way down to the canyon floor. The lieutenant had dropped his canteen while examining the tracks. More importantly, he'd left his saddlebag partially open, military documents visible within. James kept watch while Nijoni approached the horse. The animal remembered cavalry, training, staying perfectly still as she carefully drew out the orders. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the papers, scanning the English words she'd learned in secret. They're to secure the canyon system, James said, reading over her shoulder. Establish a permanent presence. My God, they're planning to force the entire tribe onto reservation land. Nijoni's fingers found the eagle feather in her pouch. Not if we can help it. She drew out her grandmother's journal, finding the page she needed. Your military leaders, they respect medicine knowledge, yes? Especially about local diseases. A slow smile spread across James's face. There was an outbreak of fever in the fort last month. Nothing serious, but working quickly, they modified the orders. A warning about contaminated water sources in the canyon system. Urgent medical intelligence about fever clusters among local tribes. A strong recommendation to avoid the summer grounds due to risk of contagion. Your lieutenant will have to withdraw, Nijoni said as they replaced the papers. Military orders are clear about disease risks. And Harrison can't push forward without proper medical assessment. James's respect was evident in his voice. You're using their own system against them, just like you did with the tracking totem. They retreated to their hiding place just as the patrol returned. The lieutenant found his dropped canteen, checked his saddlebag, and withdrew the orders for another review. They watched his face change as he read the medical warnings. Mount up, he called to his men. We're pulling back to the fort. This area's potentially contaminated. Need proper medical survey before we proceed. As the patrol rode away, taking their threat of violence with them, Nijoni felt James squeeze her hand. You just saved lives on both sides, he said quietly. Perhaps. She watched the dust settle in the canyon. But we've only bought time. Your Colonel Harrison will send others. Then we'll need to use that time wisely. James looked toward the tribal summer grounds. Your people and mine, they're both being driven by fear and mistrust, but you've shown there's another way. The hawk that had followed their journey appeared overhead, circling 3 times before flying toward the distant mountains. Another sign. Come, Nijoni said, gathering her medicines. We have much to do before the next patrol comes, and I think I know where we need to go. In the shelter of a hidden valley, beside a small spring that bubbled up from ancient rocks, Nijoni taught James to weave. Her fingers guided his through the intricate pattern of a friendship bracelet, red for blood shared, white for peace hoped for, and blue for the sky that watched over all peoples. My grandmother said that weaving is like healing, she explained, helping him correct a knot. Each thread must find its proper place, or the whole pattern fails, like bringing peace between our peoples. His fingers were surprisingly gentle with the delicate strands, belying his soldiers' calluses. Yes, and like us. She held up her own wrist, where a half-finished bracelet matched the one they worked on, 2 different threads, weaving something new. The afternoon light softened the harsh lines of the desert, casting long shadows across their small sanctuary. They had spent the day planning, drawing maps in the sand, sharing knowledge of both their people's ways. Now, in this quiet moment, other truths emerged. I never told you why I really became a scout, James said, carefully adding another strand to the pattern. That Delaware medicine woman who helped birth me, Standing Dove was her name. She didn't just disappear that night. She came to our farm to warn us about men coming to arrest her. My father helped her escape. Nijoni's hands stilled on the weaving. What happened? She left me her medicine bag. Said someday I'd understand its purpose. His eyes met hers. I joined the cavalry, thinking I could help protect people like her, build bridges between our worlds. Instead, you found yourself carrying orders that would destroy my people's way of life. Until I met a healer who showed me a path. He touched the healing crystals that lay between them, still warm with borrowed power. Standing Dove used to say that true change begins with 2 people brave enough to see past their fears. Nijoni reached into her medicine pouch and withdrew a small object, a carved stone bear her grandmother had given her. This was meant to be my strength in times of trial, but perhaps, she placed it in James's palm, perhaps it can be our strength. He studied the bear, then removed something from his own pocket, a silver compass, broken but still beautiful. My father's. It's always pointed me home. He offered it to her. Maybe it can help us find a new home for both our peoples. Their hands touched as they exchanged these tokens of trust. The medicine crystals hummed softly, responding to something deeper than words. "The cavalry won't stop coming," James said quietly, "and your warriors won't stop fighting, unless we show them another way." Nijoni's fingers returned to the weaving, adding a new pattern. "My grandmother's journal speaks of a place, a hidden valley where ancient peoples once lived in peace. A place where different tribes would meet to trade and heal. You think we can find it? I think we're meant to." She indicated the hawk feather in her pouch. "Our guide has been leading us there all along. But James," she met his eyes directly, "what we're planning, it goes against everything both our peoples believe about each other." He lifted their joined weaving, nearly complete now. "Like this pattern, thread by thread we make something new." The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors no weaving could capture. Soon they would need to move again, following the hawk's guidance toward the hidden valley. But for now, in this moment between day and night, they were neither cavalry scout nor Apache healer, just two people weaving a new future from the threads of their past. "There will be resistance," Nijoni said, securing the last knot in James's bracelet. "From both sides, there's always resistance to healing." He smiled, remembering her words from days ago. "But you taught me that healing knows no boundaries." She tied the bracelet around his wrist, feeling the pulse of life beneath her fingers. He did the same for her, the woven bands matching like a promise. The hawk's cry echoed across the valley, a call to continue their journey. But its message felt different now, touched with hope instead of warning. Tomorrow they would follow it to the hidden valley, carrying with them tokens of two worlds and the courage to bridge them. For now, they sat together in the gathering dusk, their woven bracelets catching the last light like a sign of things to come. Dawn mist clung to the canyon walls as Nijoni and James approached the tribal lands. They carried no weapons, only a white cavalry bandana tied to a branch, and the truth they hoped would bridge two worlds. The mark of betrayal on Nijoni's shoulder throbbed with each step as if awakening to its homeland. "The morning guard will have spotted us already," she said, touching the healing crystals in her pouch for courage. "They're waiting to see what we do." James nodded, his hand finding hers. The woven bracelet on his wrist caught the early light. How will they respond to the white flag? They'll recognize it, but whether they honor it... She took a deep breath. "That depends on who holds the watch." As if in answer, a figure emerged. From the shadows ahead, Shadow Walker, bow held ready but not drawn. His eyes took in their joined hands, the white flag, the changes that days of shared flight had wrought in them both. "You return freely?" he asked in Apache. "We return with purpose," Nijoni answered. Then, breaking tradition, she spoke in English so James could understand. "We bring a way forward that serves both peoples." Shadow Walker's gaze sharpened. "You speak the enemy's tongue openly now?" "I speak the tongue of healing," she said, "as my grandmother did, as the ancient ones did when different tribes met in peace." More warriors emerged from hiding, 6 in all, including Standing Bear. His face darkened at the sight of James, hand tightening on his knife. "The council declared you exile," Standing Bear spat. "The blue coat was condemned to death." "Then, let them pass that sentence again," Nijoni said, standing straighter, "after they hear what we have found." A tense silence followed. Shadow Walker looked to the sky, where the red-tailed hawk circled overhead. His expression shifted subtly. "The signs have been unusual these past days," he said carefully. "Elder Mingan speaks of change coming. It's already here." Nijoni held up her wrist, showing the woven bracelet that matched James's. "We are the change." Standing Bear stepped forward, but Shadow Walker raised his hand. "The council must hear them. The old laws demand it. The old laws say nothing about traitors returning with their captives." "Look closer," Shadow Walker said quietly. "Does he look like a captive to you?" Indeed, James stood as an equal beside Nijoni, their shoulders touching. The healing they had shared, the dangers they had faced together, had erased the boundaries between captor and prisoner. "We know about the cavalry's plans," James said, addressing Standing Bear directly. "Their orders to force your people onto reservation land. But we also know a way to prevent it." "Why should we trust anything you say?" "Because I trust him with my life," Nijoni interrupted, "as he has trusted me with his. We have found something, a place the Ancient Ones used for peace between peoples, a place that could change everything." She reached into her medicine and pouch and withdrew her grandmother's journal, opening it to the map they had discovered. Shadow Walker's eyes widened at the familiar handwriting. "Your grandmother's words speak of hope," Nijoni finished. "Of a time when healing would bridge the warpath. That time is now." The sun had risen fully now, painting the canyon in shades of promise. Standing Bear's warriors looked to him for direction, while Shadow Walker waited with the patience of a born tracker. Finally, Standing Bear spoke. "The council will hear you, but the Bluecoats' fate remains in their hands." "Our fates are joined now," Nijoni said firmly, "like the strands in these bracelets. What happens to one happens to both." She felt James squeeze her hand, a gesture of support, of shared purpose. The healing crystals in her pouch hummed with power, sensing the moment's importance. Shadow Walker gave a slight nod. "Come. The elders will want to hear this tale from the beginning." As they walked toward the tribal camp, Nijoni felt the weight of many eyes upon them. Warriors watched from the cliffs. Women paused in their morning tasks. Children whispered behind their hands. She walked proudly, the mark of betrayal on her shoulder now feeling more like a badge of courage. The hawk's cry echoed through the canyon 3 times, as it had done throughout their journey. But now its call held a new note, one that spoke not of warning but of possibility. "Whatever happens," James whispered, "we've already changed things. They can see that." Nijoni touched the silver compass he had given her, its broken arrow somehow still pointing true. "Then let us show them how much more can change." Together they walked toward whatever judgment awaited, carrying with them the seeds of a future neither of their peoples had dared to imagine. The council fire burned high as Nijoni and James stood before the gathered tribe. Elder Mingan sat at the head of the circle, the unlit peace pipe resting across his knees. Beside him, throat like dawn's weathered face held a glimmer of hope, while Standing Bear's warriors lined the edges of the gathering, hands never far from their weapons. "You returned from exile before its term," Elder Mingan began, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "And you bring with you the one whose life caused your punishment. Speak your purpose." Nijoni stepped forward, her grandmother's journal held carefully in both hands. "I bring not just purpose, but possibility, a way forward that honors both our traditions and our future." She opened the journal, revealing the ancient map they had discovered. "My grandmother spoke often of the old ways, not just of war, but of peace. She wrote of a place where the Ancient Ones gathered, where different peoples came together to trade and heal." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elder Mingan leaned forward, studying the map with keen interest. "The Valley of Meeting," he breathed. "It was thought lost to legend. We've found it," James said, stepping up beside Nijoni. "A 3 days' journey north, hidden where 3 canyons join. The ancient paintings still mark its walls, stories of peace between peoples." "And why? Should we trust the word of a bluecoat?" Standing Bear challenged. "One who carries orders to drive us from our lands?" "Because I carry something else as well." James withdrew a bundle of papers, the cavalry orders they had seen. "Colonel Harrison plans to force your people onto reservation land. But if we can establish the valley as a place of peaceful exchange, a neutral ground, you suggest we surrender our ways?" Another warrior called out. "No," Nijoni answered firmly. "I suggest we expand them. Our greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt, to learn, to grow stronger by embracing new wisdom." She touched her medicine pouch. My grandmother knew this. She learned healing ways from many peoples and saved many lives because of it. Throat like dawn stood, her ancient voice surprisingly strong. I have examined the eagle feather she used to heal this man. It holds power from both medicines, Apache and white. The spirits themselves blessed this joining. The council fire crackled, sending sparks toward the sky where the hawk still circled. Elder Mingan lifted the peace pipe, studying its carved surface. In the time of my grandfather's grandfather, he said slowly, this pipe was smoked by 5 different peoples who came together in peace. But war and fear ended those gatherings. You believe this valley could restore such meetings? I believe it must, Nijoni said. The cavalry comes with each season, pushing harder. The reservations shrink year by year. But if we can show another way, a place where trading and healing replace fighting, your colonel would accept this. Standing Bear's tone was skeptical, but no longer hostile. James met his gaze steadily. With proof that peaceful exchange is possible? Yes, it would save lives on both sides, and the army values that, especially if we can show them the medical benefits of combining our healing traditions. Nijoni held up her wrist, showing the woven bracelet. Look at what we have already woven together. 2 peoples, 2 traditions, creating something stronger than either alone. The council fell silent, considering. Elder Mingan's fingers traced the peace pipe's surface, feeling the wisdom of generations carved into its bowl. The world changes, he said finally. Like water cutting through stone, it shapes new paths. Perhaps, he looked at Throat Like Dawn, who nodded slowly. Perhaps the spirits have sent us guides to show us these new ways. He stood, raising his voice to address the entire gathering. We will consider this valley, this possibility of peace, but first you must prove its existence. Find it. Show us that this ancient place of meeting still lives. And if we do, Nijoni asked. The elder lifted the peace pipe. Then perhaps it is time for old traditions to be renewed, for new smoke to rise from this pipe. It wasn't a full acceptance, but it was a chance. Nijoni felt James's hand find hers, their woven bracelets touching. We will need guides, James said, those who can help us prove that peace is possible. Shadow Walker stepped forward from the crowd. I will go to see if the signs I have read these past days speak true. Others began to rise, younger warriors curious about new possibilities, older members who remembered tales of the peace gatherings. The council fire blazed higher, as if approval from the spirits themselves. The search party set out at first light. Nijoni and James, Shadow Walker, 4 young warriors who had volunteered, and Throat Like Dawn, whose ancient knowledge would help them read the signs. The red-tailed hawk led their way, its cry echoing through the canyons like a beacon. Your grandmother's map shows 3 days' journey, Shadow Walker said, studying the terrain ahead. But these paths have changed with time. Rockfalls, flash floods. The old ones knew this would happen. Throat Like Dawn spoke from her horse, her voice carrying wisdom earned through decades. They left markers for those who know how to see. As if confirming her words, they came upon their first sign, a petroglyph carved high on a canyon wall. To untrained eyes, it might have seemed like just another ancient drawing. But Nijoni recognized the pattern her grandmother had documented. The spiral that joins, she said, consulting the journal. It means we're on the path of meeting. James studied the carving with military precision. These wouldn't have been random. They're navigation points, aren't they? Like the stars we use for naval charts. Your people and mine, Throat Like Dawn smiled. Perhaps not so different in how we find our way. They traveled through the morning, following the ancient markers. The young warriors, initially skeptical, began to show interest as more signs appeared. Each one confirmed the wisdom in Nijoni's grandmother's journal. Each step proved that their peoples had once known peace. Near midday, they reached a narrow pass where the canyon walls drew close. Shadow Walker held up his hand, signaling a halt. Cavalry tracks, he said, kneeling to examine the ground. Recent. A patrol passed through here yesterday. Tension rippled through the group. The young warriors reached for their weapons, but James stepped forward, studying the tracks himself. Lieutenant Morris's patrol, he said. They're following the false medical orders we planted, moving away from tribal lands. Then we're between two worlds here, Nijoni observed. Like the valley we seek. They made camp that night in a sheltered alcove, where more petroglyphs adorned the walls. As the others prepared the evening meal, Nijoni and James studied the ancient artwork with throat like dawn. Look here, the old medicine woman pointed to a series of symbols. The ancient ones drew themselves meeting others in peace. See how the smoke rises between them. They shared the pipe, shared medicine, shared wisdom. Like we're doing now, James said softly, touching his woven bracelet. Through the night, throat like dawn shared stories of the old peace gatherings, passed down through generations of medicine women, tales of healing knowledge exchanged, of friendships forged, of ways that different peoples found to live together. The young warriors listened with growing interest. Even Shadow Walker, for all his caution, seemed moved by the possibility these stories offered. Dawn brought them to a choice of paths. The journal's map showed both routes eventually leading to the valley, but time had erased the markers showing. Which was safer? We should split up, Shadow Walker suggested. Cover both paths, find the true way. Nijoni looked to James, saw her own thought reflected in his eyes. No, we find it together or not at all. That's the whole point of this journey. They chose the western path, following the hawk's flight. Mid-morning brought them to a steep cliff face that seemed to dead-end their progress. But there, half hidden by centuries of weathering, they found it. The largest petroglyph yet. The sign of joining, throat like dawn breathed. Where the peoples came together. The ancient carving showed figures from different tribes meeting in a hidden valley, surrounded by symbols of peace and healing. At its center was a spiral pattern that matched the one on Nijoni's grandmother's journal. James studied the cliff face with a scout's eye. There must be a way through. These markers wouldn't lead us to a dead end. Shadow Walker found it. A narrow crack in the rock face, barely visible unless you knew to look. Beyond it, a hidden trail wound upward. The old ones were clever, he said with newfound respect. They made sure only those seeking peace could find the way. They worked together to widen the passage enough for the horses. Apache warriors and a cavalry scout side by side, clearing a path that their ancestors had once walked in peace. As the sun reached its peak, they emerged onto a high ridge. There, spread before them in the clear desert light, was what they had sought. A hidden valley where three canyons met, its walls decorated with ancient signs of peace. The hawk circled overhead, crying out 3 times before landing on a nearby rock. Its work as guide was done. The Valley of Meeting, Nijoni said softly, feeling the healing crystals hum in her pouch. It's real. More than real, Throat Like Dawn added. It's alive, waiting to serve its purpose once again. They stood together on the ridge, Apache and white man alike, looking down at a place where peace had once flourished, and perhaps, with courage and wisdom, could flourish again. 1 year later, the Valley of Meeting lived up to its ancient name. Where once only wind and hawks had dwelt, now a remarkable gathering took place. Apache medicine women worked alongside cavalry doctors in a healing lodge built where old pictographs blessed the walls. Tribal elders sat with military officers, sharing wisdom earned through generations of living in this harsh but beautiful land. Nijoni moved through it all, her medicine pouch now containing both traditional herbs and modern supplies. The mark of betrayal on her shoulder had faded to a silver scar, no longer a brand of shame, but a badge of transformation. She paused in her work to watch James demonstrate splinting techniques to a group of young Apache healers. Your grandmother would be proud, Throat Like Dawn said, appearing beside her. The old medicine woman's eyes sparkled as she surveyed the valley. She saw this future in her dreams, you know. wrote of it in her journal. I know. Nijoni touched the worn book, now filled with new pages documenting the mixing of healing traditions. But seeing it alive, their conversation was interrupted by the sound of hooves. Shadow Walker rode in with Lieutenant Morris, once enemies, now partners in maintaining the peace of the valley. Behind them came trading parties from 3 different tribes, drawn by news of this extraordinary place. The commander's message arrived, James said, joining them. The War Department has officially recognized the Valley of Meeting as neutral territory. No military operations will be conducted within 20 miles of its borders. Elder Mingan, seated in a place of honor near the central fire, lifted the peace pipe that now saw regular use. And our council has declared these grounds sacred to all peoples. The ancient ones would be pleased. Nijoni watched smoke rise from the pipe, carrying prayers skyward. The red-tailed hawk still lived in the valley, now joined by others of its kind. Their cries echoed off canyon walls, where new pictures were being added beside the old. Images of peoples coming together, of healing hands bridging ancient divides. In the healing lodge, she had created something her grandmother had only dreamed of, a place where different medicines worked in harmony. Apache herbs grew alongside European remedies. Traditional ceremonies shared space with modern medical practices, each made stronger by the other's presence. "Tell me again," a young cavalry doctor asked her, "about using willow bark with your Viva patients?" As Nijoni explained the treatment, she saw James smile. He wore both his cavalry insignia and a medicine pouch of his own now, walking the bridge between worlds as she did. Their woven bracelets had faded with time, but had been replaced by something stronger. Wedding bands that combined Apache symbols with American silver. A commotion at the valley's entrance drew their attention. A cavalry patrol was bringing in a wounded Apache hunter they'd found in the desert. Instead of conflict, such encounters now led to cooperation. Nijoni hurried to help, her mixed medicines ready. "You see," Throat Like Dawn said to the gathering, "the prophecy speaks true. When we heal division, we heal ourselves." The sun set over the Valley of Meeting, painting the sky in colors of promise. Where Nijoni had once seen only the threat of war between peoples, she now saw something else. The first fragile strands of peace being woven into a pattern strong enough to hold the future. She thought of that first night, when she had chosen to heal an enemy. The path from that moment to this one had been dangerous, marked with sacrifice and courage. But looking at the valley now, filled with the sounds of different languages sharing knowledge, of medicines mixing to save lives, of ancient wisdom, finding new purpose. She knew every step had been worth taking. "A year ago," James said softly, taking her hand, "you told me that healing knows no boundaries. And now we prove it every day." She touched her medicine pouch, feeling the familiar warmth of the healing crystals within. "Every life we save together, every tradition we preserve while growing stronger." Their words were interrupted by a new sound, a baby's cry from the healing lodge. The first child to be born in the Valley of Meeting, to parents from different worlds. Already, the Old One's prophecies were coming true in ways none had expected. The hawk circled overhead one last time before settling on its perch above the ancient petroglyphs. Below, Apache ceremonies and cavalry protocols had found ways to coexist. Children from both peoples played together, learning each other's languages. And in the healing lodge, a new generation of medicine workers learned to combine the best of all traditions. Nijoni and James walked together toward the lodge, their shadows merging in the evening light. The mark of betrayal on her shoulder caught the sun's last rays, transformed now into a sign of hope, proof that the greatest healing comes not from separation, but from the courage to reach across ancient divides and find the humanity waiting on the other side.